Hey, Bigger Pockets, it's Matt. And today we're going to talk about property management and what it takes to have a good property management company versus a great property management company. Now, I know a little bit about this because we own our own property management company and we manage our own assets and some assets for other people. And we also have properties that are remote from where our main office is located that we hired a property management company to run for us. So these are what I found over the years on what the parameters of property management are and what makes them good versus great. So first, let's talk about property management in general, and we'll talk about how to break it down. So you've got the tenant, okay? And then you've got the owner, okay? And I view the property manager to be the conduit, the person that pretty much sits between the tenant and the owner, and is a lot of times the voice of one to the other. And this is where the PM sits, okay? Right here in the middle. And the property manager's role, as I see it, is to be the voice at times for the tenant to the owner and to address the things that are of importance to the tenant. Well, what are things like that? Well, okay, let's talk about maybe things that are important to the tenant. Okay, how about maintenance? Just general upkeep. How about just when the tenant first moves in, how about any assistance that the owner may need to provide in getting the utility switched over? The property manager would deal with that. Perhaps we've had to provide a letter or a copy of the lease to fax over to the utility company for the tenant on the owner's behalf. Glad to do that. So just any other just third-party representation on the tenant's behalf to other entities such as utilities, such as the local town, such as perhaps agencies that are assisting the tenant in paying their rent, like Section 8. The property manager is the conduit to assist the tenant with their needs that typically an owner would step in if there wasn't a property manager in place. So just general third-party representation, okay? Okay? Now, that's pretty straight up. Now, the property manager also represents the owner for their needs. Okay, so owner's needs, what's the biggest need that the owner has, right? This sounds silly, but it's true. Rent. The owner needs rent. The owner has expenses that they need to maintain the property, be that a mortgage and all kinds of other expenses, so they need rent from the tenant so the owner can continue to keep the property in good working order. And the property manager is there to collect that rent from that tenant. And that's probably the biggest role that an owner would say the property manager has, is to collect rent. So obviously to place the tenant, that the property manager has to do in the first place, so to create the tenant to begin with, so to fill a vacancy, that's there, and that's there for the tenant as well to represent the owner in a vacant unit and to present it and to talk about what the amenities the unit has, and to negotiate on behalf of the owner with the tenant and everything on leasing. So that's there too. So leasing, that's new leasing, and that's also lease renewals, because if you're a good owner, then you're making sure you've got constant lease renewals every year. You're renewing your lease contracts. So leasing and renewals, right? So that's really the owner's needs. The owner needs rent on time, and unfortunately, if the tenant doesn't uphold their end of the bargain, then the property manager has to, unfortunately, file eviction on the tenant or press the tenant for rent if the tenant's not able to do that, or leasing and renewals and things like that. And there's some other general things that come in the property manager representing the tenant and the owner. And these things boil down, if you're a good property manager and you're doing what you're supposed to do, then you're collecting rent on time from the tenant, and you are representing keeping the property in decent working order on behalf of the tenant, handling tenant maintenance requests, doing whatever it is to keep the property up. That is good property management. Rent paid, work orders completed, okay? And like I would say probably 80% of property managers are good property managers at the least, and there's those that don't even qualify as good, that can't even collect the rent on time for you or can't even accomplish maintenance. But this is the baseline if they can do this. So let's talk about great property management. So I'll use green for great, okay? So great property management is where it comes in, and there's other things that are outside the basics here. And so this is what I call upholding quality, okay? Quality of what? Quality of living, okay? Quality of living. What does that mean? Okay, well, it's outside of addressing work orders. Quality of living for the tenant might mean if you've got a multifamily, we have this happen regularly. You got a multifamily, you got a tenant on the second floor that is disturbing the tenant on the first floor. Well, if the property manager just abdicates that and says, well, it's not my problem, you'll have to talk to the tenant yourself, or you'll have to not bother me with that, or you'll have to, even worse, call the police and have the police come to deal with the tenant upstairs or something like that. If the property manager won't defend quality of living in the building, that doesn't really serve the tenant and benefit the tenant's quality of life. That's not good. That's not great property management. It's good property management to abdicate it and say, oh, you know what, that's not my problem. But good property management upholds quality of life, okay? And what does quality of life lead to? Well, it's the next thing also that I hold as property. And this is a hard one to gauge, but it's something that I think that you want to talk to property managers to make sure it's even important to them. And that's called tenant happiness. What do happy tenants do? Happy tenants that are happy in their properties tend to stay longer. They tend to treat the place like it's home for them, and they tend to pay their rent on time, and they tend to be happy in where they are. Now, so there's plenty of people in the world you're never going to make happy, even if they were only paying you $1 a month in rent and there was nothing ever wrong with their place. They're still not going to be happy. I have those tenants too, that there's just nothing you're going to do to make them all happy all the time. But there are other things to maintain tenant happiness, such as quality of life, like addressing neighbor issues that may come up. So let's write that down and we'll talk about how to do it. So that's tenant happiness. Okay, here's some things for tenant happiness, just some ideas. Okay, you want tenants to feel appreciated. We've got enough tenant base that I reward my tenants every here and again. Every quarter I do a drawing and I give away a $50 gift card to one tenant that's paid their rent on time over that quarter. And I do another drawing in a year for if a tenant's paid their rent on time for an entire year. I do a drawing and I give away one flat screen TV. And I make sure tenants are aware of this, that they're aware that we do this and everything like that. It makes them feel rewarded, makes them feel appreciated. And you better believe we blast out to all the other tenants, hey, you know, just so you know, you could have won the flat screen yourself, or get yourself in the drawing and make sure that your name's in the hat. You know, you got to pay your rent on time though. And that, so tenant happiness is appreciation. It's showing some pride in the property, so that if the owner shows pride, they'll show pride. And pride doesn't have to be investing, you know, tens of thousands of dollars into landscaping every year, but it could be just keeping the property clean and taking care of pest management, like having an Orkin guy go out there and spray every here and again if it's a larger multifamily. So doing things like that to keep tenants happy and to maintain overall building quality it is great property management. And the last thing is upholding building quality, okay? That's quality of the asset. That's taking a stand for the owner as well. Now, these other things, I would argue all day long with any owner that doesn't think I should be giving away a flat screen TV every here and again to their tenants, because I can show you statistics that those tenants stay longer. And when they know that there's some sort of reward for them, I can show you statistics on lower paid rent, on longer, just rents paid on time more frequently, and tenants staying in properties longer if they feel like the property manager really cares about the place that they live, and they feel like there's that, sense of home for them. So now, building quality. This is real deal that it helps the owners out. And I'm talking about preventative maintenance. If the only time that the property manager sends somebody out to the property is when the tenant calls and says, hey man, my toilet's overflowing, or geez, this tree that's next to my house is completely leaning into the place, and as a property manager, you perhaps could have gone out there and seen that the tree was about to start leaning into the house and cut it down or groomed it or something like that to stop it from doing that. Just all kinds of examples like that of things that a property manager can do to prevent emergency maintenance or to just prevent long-term deterioration of the property. So roof inspections, just doing walkthroughs to make sure tenants are keeping the properties clean and making sure they're taking good care of it. If the property manager is not doing building quality maintenance through preventative maintenance walkthroughs and reminding the owner, hey man, it's been like 2 or 3 years since you've even had the roof inspected, or we should probably have that boiler serviced, or things like changing the filters on the heating units, all kinds of those things that maintain long-term building quality. If you guys are interviewing property managers, they should do some of these quality issues, because this is great property management. It keeps your asset in good shape, and your asset has long-term longevity, and your tenants are going to stay longer if the property manager is doing something to maintain quality of life. They don't have to give away flat screens like I do. They got to do something, though, or at least seem that they care a bit about the tenant's long-term happiness, the tenant's long-term longevity and quality of life in the unit. Remember, guys, this is the baseline stuff. Collecting rent and handling work orders, you got to go above and beyond that. If that's all you're worried about, that's their job. That's like the baseline thing that any property management company should do. But the property management company that's going to give you tenants that are going to be willing to pay a premium for your property, and eventually people that will be willing to pay a premium to buy the property from you, or when you consider a property manager that has some consideration, and I would consider a major consideration for quality issues. So that's it for today, guys. So I want you to just leave comments below if you've had great property managers that were considering quality, or if you've had awful property managers that couldn't even do this. Let's tell some stories, share some thoughts on property management that you guys may have. And also for your property managers that are watching this, I'd love to hear from you on some ways that you help maintain building quality. If you call yourself a great property manager, I want to hear from you too. So thanks again for watching, guys, and have a great and profitable week.